This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
Okay, what are you working on?
So my question is about field relabeling. I've kind of exhausted all my avenues on researching that. I'm trying to see if it's possible or not too big of a feat to get my company to where we can field relabel, or at least myself. And I was wondering if you knew what avenues you might research or pursue for something like that. I don't see much about it.
So if I was going to investigate how to have the permission to relabel doors and frames in the field, I would contact a testing laboratory, such as Intertech, or what people would say the big one, but they're not the big one; they're the small one. UL, Underwriters Laboratory. I know that UL is in Northbrook, Illinois, because I used to live over there.
Okay.
So if I was going to do it, I'd call UL and say, "Hey, what's the deal? You got to do a lot."
Okay, yeah, I
want
to give that a shot.
You'd have to have a lot of demand for these because it's costly to be able to field, inspect, and relabel things. Oh my goodness! I think UL 30 years ago, I think they charged $500 to come out to the job and inspect a door and relabel it. So,
okay. We've been doing a lot of replacements for a larger company. It's senior care facilities over here on the West Coast. And we've been finding ourselves replacing fire doors that we don't necessarily have to. And so I'm wondering if I could get certified and maybe help these guys out by just being able to relabel, instead of tearing out the whole opening and replacing it just over a label or. But I know that's kind of an industry you got to slip in to, so to speak.
I think all you got to do is call UL and find out what it's potentially going to cost and determine if it's worthwhile. If you're a door distributor,
yeah, I'll give that a shot.
It's not going to be worthwhile.
Okay, alrighty.
I've never dealt with UL directly, but I have dealt with Intertech directly. I found that they were always easy to work with. I think what you've got to do, though, is be mindful of the original testing laboratory, in the sense that if that door was labeled UL, the ability to inspect and slap an Intertech label on it is probably not going to work, because you're there to inspect and relabel. You're not there to certify things as compliant, meaning if Fenestra or Kawani or Amweld, companies that are out of business, if they took their door to Northbrook and had it tested and it passed, UL is going to say, yep, you can label that exact assembly. But if you did not undergo the test with Intertech or Warnock Hersey, you couldn't slap that label on there because it just wasn't tested. So your ability to relabel doesn't mean you are enfranchised to determine its ability to withstand the application.
And you still have to find all the identifying extras, so to speak, on the door, right? Like any stamps or anything to actually show that it was a fire door at one point.
So, yeah, in the sense that if you happen to know that the door was Kawani and they've been out of business for, let's just say, 20 years, you could contact UL, and I think they were Warnock Hersey as well. I forget, but for sure UL. And you could say, hey, I've got some Kawani doors out in the field. I know that they were fire rated originally. And they would be able to pull up their records, or what I would call their procedures. Like Kawani would have a binder of their procedures that here's what you've tested, here's what you're authorized to mark, is what it's called, authorized to mark. So they would rivet their label on there, or they would coin the frame with a die. So that's a really important thing to consider. If you've got something that for sure was fire rated, yeah, you got a chance. But if it was not, if you're trying to do UL, that means anything that was never UL originally is not up for discussion, as far as I understand it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, if it was me, I would only pursue UL only because it's more common in the hollow metal game. in the United States
Okay.
here with us. Wood doors, different business altogether. A different Warnock, Hersey, or Intertech might be more common for wood doors, but hollow metal, if you're going to spend money, it'd be
Gotcha.
UL only. Yeah.
We were going to get our hardware machiner certificate through Intertech to prep fire doors.
I know a lot about that.
So I was going to go down that road here soon. I've been trying to get a door shop going, but getting in this industry and running is kind of hard.
How many doors do you machine a month?
Right now we're doing it out of the garage. We're probably doing maybe close to 100. We're doing replacements, some new doors.
Yeah, I think that number would make sense because it's a not insignificant monthly charge. The advantage of that is you would be able to just order doors from your factory. What manufacturer are you buying doors from?
American Building Supply.
Okay, so I don't know much about them except that I'm familiar with the name. I don't know if they're laying up their own doors. If they're not, you'd probably want to contact.
They are, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you'd be able to buy their slabs without labels on them, and you would be authorized to remachine and then mark those doors within the procedure. So literally, Intertech is going to show up with a binder. They're going to send you a binder, and that says what you can do, and anything that's not specifically mentioned is inherently understood as you cannot do. An example of that would be a full light cutout where your stiles are 3-inch. That's too close to the door edge. So
gotcha. So they give you their tolerances, so to speak.
Oh no, they just give you direct minimums and maximums, things of that nature.
Okay, gotcha.
And I've done that. And what happens is, for sure, on a semi-predictable basis, the field inspector is going to show up. He's going to check your logbook. He's going to physically inspect your labels. There will be an initial inspection, which is no big deal. They're just say, show me your space, show me your tools. You don't have to demonstrate proficiency, but there's repeated inspections, no big deal. The only time that you'll get in trouble with that is you have labels that are missing, meaning that you didn't write it down in your log. You have to put serial number, the date, what rating it was, what it was prepped for, and maybe your internal order number. I don't recall that part.
Okay.
But I think 100 would be the minimum, but that would really open you up to say, oh, now I don't have to order these doors from American, 3 hinges and a 161 to Steelcraft locations. You can do anything you want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay.
I'll
look into UL too.
The other thing that's kind of cool about that is I would not pursue UL for wood doors. I think they'd be far more expensive than Intertech. Intertech is an order of magnitude bigger than UL. The other thing that's cool about doing it in your shop is you can re-rail and restyle them. So a guy calls up and says, yeah, I need a 210-7L. You're like, no problem. It'll cost a fortune, but give me a week and I'll have it ready for you.
Yeah.
So where all of this leads that you're doing is a very simple list of 4 things that you need to do it yourself. You're going to need skins, you're going to need cores, you're going to need stiles and rails, and you're going to need glue. At that point, you need a press. That's easy to find and buy. You're going to need a way to trim the doors. I've seen how many manufacturers do it.
Where would you source the press from? I've looked overseas, but I didn't really see a lot of American manufacturers, but I haven't dove that far into it.
No, definitely Italian. I don't remember the name of the press we had. We had a 5x10. I don't remember the tonnage, but it was exactly perfect for the job. We could lay up. I think the most it would fit would be maybe 18 doors at once.
Okay.
I just don't recall. I know it was from out of Italy, and I think back then it cost us about $40,000. The real problem with making your own doors, though, the real BITCH is the trimming of the stiles and the rails, because you don't have a true edge at that point. So, if you could fit, I know how Ideal did it. They were in New Albany, Indiana years ago. They just had a couple of sliding table saws. Actually, what they had was, I think, a couple of rip saws with blades on both sides. And it would go down. It would go straight down where it would then rip the width. Then that door would not rotate. It would just move then to the right or to the left to the next gang saw. I don't know if gang saw is the right term. It would then trim the height. So you were constantly setting one of those blades depending on your setups. So that's the hardest part of doing all of this. Now, in the initial stages, you could just get a door clamp that's the right length and then just use a circular saw and trim that down. And so it's not the end of the world, but I felt like back then we had to be laying up like, I don't know, at least 60 doors a day for all of that to make sense. Then the other problem is you got to buy door skins. And back in the day, there were two people who you would buy it from.
I was just going to ask.
Yeah, Megantic was the Canadian one, and then Birchwood in kind of northern central Wisconsin was the other. So if you get the skins, it's just 1/8-inch plywood. You get the skins. The glue you can find, the particle board, and the core, you would either get Georgia Pacific or Weyerhaeuser. The problem with the entire cult of wood door companies, raw material people, and I'm just going to say this, and if you can't do it, don't even start. These folks are net 30. You go to net 31, they may give you a one-time get-out-of-jail-free card one time. You do that again to them, they close your account, period. You are therefore out of the door-making business. So don't get into it if you've got the volume. Yeah, they will shut you down, and that's all there is to it. They don't. These guys.
Because I just got my company to where we're at that point, to where we can, I guess, finance the client, so to speak. Yeah. That way we can be in that game with upper echelon of clients, so to speak.
Yeah, the problem today is far worse than the problem 30 years ago in the sense of lead time. But what's really happening, though, in order for you to be profitable and feel like you worked really hard and have money that you deem worthwhile to show for it, is it's hard to go to someone and say, I need $900 for a 3070, flat cut mahogany. It's, and then what door skins are you going to stock? Are you going to stock Sapele? Are you going to stock Rift White Oak? Are you going to stock, are you just going to keep it to the garden variety material?
Yeah, that's actually kind of what I've been working up now is what finishes you'll store, the whole, you got to make a menu.
Yeah, we got to a point where we were keeping 3070 skins and then 4090 skins. And anything bigger than 3070, you're paying for 4090 material. Cherry, obviously red oak, plain slice.
And can you get a lot of these veneers in the United States?
Well, if Birchwood's still in business, that's who I would call.
Okay. So they do multiple veneers, not just Birchwood. That's just their name.
Yeah. You can.
Okay.
Birchwood was Megantic was good because they were cheaper. They were less expensive on stuff that was more native to the Quebec area of Canada, I think is where they were. I think they were actually in Megantic, whatever the province is there.
Okay. So when you're sourcing materials for a fire-rated door that you're going to build, are there ratings already on those veneers tested in a different way, or is it only tested once you have an assembly made, if that makes sense?
If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it.
Well, it's just like a hollow metal door opening. I mean, as long as you're using a steel or stainless-based ball-bearing hinge, you're good. As long as you put all the components together in such a way that's compliant with the way that it was originally tested, you're good. So I wouldn't, I think I was only stocking, I think it was 60/90 minute cores, and that covered everything I needed to do. I could put a 45-minute label on those cores because you're okay to go in that direction.
Okay.
And I've been to Birchwood's factory. Yeah, they were good folks, but they don't play when it comes to accounts receivable.
Speaking of cores, too, I was wondering if I could ask you how an intumescent core behaves in a fire. That's one thing I couldn't just Google and find. Because a lot of the doors in these facilities that I'm in, they're intumescent core, and I'm not actually sure what that means for a core. I understand gasketing, but not the core.
Yeah, I think what it is, and I when I was manufacturing wood doors, positive pressure was yet to be a thing. So it was all neutral pressure. And as far as I understand it, there is the inclusion of intumescent material below the stile. And that stile ultimately ends up becoming a veneer on the edge of the tectonite is the name for fire core material. Back then it was only made on an Indian reservation in the Pacific Northwest. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm not really the best person to ask, except that if you look at a cut sheet of a door that's going to have wood door intumescent, it's something that's added below the level of the stile, and that becomes a veneer at that point, which is completely AWI compliant. And that would be another thing I would do, is definitely know AWI Section 1300 really, really well, because that is the yardstick that we're all measuring. I know that I've got that in my website. So it's Birchwood Manufacturing. They're in Rice Lake, Wisconsin. I don't know if they're still in the same game, but I believe that they are. Now, at the end of the day, also, you could also, I don't know much about American Building. We were like their second customer in Chicago, 5 Lakes, when they started in 97, maybe 96.
Okay.
They are a really simple, straightforward, no-nonsense outfit, and you should probably price compare them if they'll take you on as a client, because there have been stretches in my 3+ decade relationship where they're like, dude, we have no more capacity.
Gotcha.
So, I don't know where American would be on anything, but you might just say, well, gosh, X and Y is more money, or they're less money, and we could get more.
Yeah.
My ceiling just got pushed up. So
You'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I mean, then you need glue. You'll buy glue in 55-gallon drums. There's lots of people. You'll want type 1 glue if you're going to use one glue exclusively that's more exterior rated. The harder part was finding particle board, because you need 30-pound density. If you get anything heavier than that, like cabinet countertop grade density, that door's going to be a beast to pick up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Countertop. You can, but it's going to be a beast. So
okay, and you basically go off of the same specifications for WDMA, right? Unless you're doing a fire door, then it has more specs to go off of, because that's where it all falls to, right?
Well, if it's a fire door, you're following your procedures, the binder that you've been given by the testing laboratory, the binder that you've bought, basically. Right. And it was Oshkosh up in Wisconsin, like many, over 30 years ago, that they had a unique machine for applying the stiles to the door. A couple of straight edges with lobes or eccentric shaped items that had a foot pedal, and it would come in, and they had a hot glue, so it would hold it there for 45 seconds, and bingo, your stiles were on. And that's another thing. You've got to buy stiles. And I think I was buying them from some company in Michigan. But it's, that's another thing that you've got to figure out how to buy or how to make. When you add all these components up, and you're on the West Coast, so labor is going to be prohibitive. Period. End of sentence. And I'm as much a fan as the guy making the hamburger at McDonald's as anyone else. But when they're making $18, $20 an hour, you're going to find it really hard to find someone that you'll trust to make architectural wood products. That's going to be tough.
Yeah, that is a concern of mine. And it's outright hard to, at least over here, it's hard to find people in the door industry. It's hard to find people that have a really good interest in it, to want to be there and do it correctly, so to speak.
Yeah, there's 0% unemployment in our industry, that's for sure.
Well, I appreciate your input.
Are you in Oregon?
I was in Oregon. Right now I'm in Sacramento area is where our company's based out of.
Yeah. Well, I know California is a big market. I constantly am having hollow metal work there, occasionally wood slab work done. I'm a Seco distributor, and they've got a service center in Ontario.
Oh, okay.
So they've got a really huge amount of inventory sitting there.
So do you have a door shop yourself, or are you just in the hardware game?
No. I do have a door shop, but because ASA Abloy has service centers everywhere and all of them have door shops, I just don't. because there's no advantage to me personally doing it. I've owned Caval CNC machinery. I've manufactured my own wood doors. My wood shop had a dozen people in it once upon a time. The money's just not there. It's just not there.
Okay.
When you a customer needs 18 3080 30 8'6" Anna Gray pre-finished. Yeah, 20-week lead time. That's all there is to it. Where's my angle in that? Doing it myself? Sure, the doors are $1,800 each, and I can't pre-finish it because I don't have $1 million UV line. So, the problem is it's the wrong. It's not Hermes purses or Rolex watches. It's just the commodity doesn't bear huge markups. It's the most awful thing to sell because it's heavy, it's large, it's hard to move, it's easy to damage, and your margin, the market won't pay for a healthy margin. That's the problem.
Yeah, well, I got my math cut out for me then. I'll have to weigh my options.
It all boils down to volume. If you've got volume, then the math kind of falls in. But if you don't have the volume, I think what's best is just being honest about, okay, yeah, no, we're not there yet. I don't know how many doors a week Five Lakes lays up, but it's thousands.
Okay. Yeah, and actually right now we're not totally into the door game. That's where I'm trying to go, is to get a door shop. Right now we're actually more in automatic doors, nurse call systems, stuff like that. But we're kind of mixed up in it all. But doors are our main squeeze.
Yeah, if you're doing high energy material, you're already in the hospital, and their funding is based on compliance with NFPA 80. So,
is that the Joint Commission that controls that or dictates that?
Yep.
I've been trying to research that. Kind of what makes hospitals have to go with Assa Abloy, and I don't mean like the brand necessarily, but like such a high caliber company. Like, it's a hospital and all that stuff, but I've seen like all hospitals have to have a primo door guy, it looks like. So I was trying to research that and kind of see what governs that. And I think it was actually the day before yesterday, I was thinking, I think it's the Joint Commission.
Definitely. That's who's controlling compliance and funding. And NFPA 80, if you're not a certified fire door assembly inspector, you should probably look into that. I've done it both with DHI and with ALOA. I'm
getting ready to do DHIs here. I've got the cheap one that's like $180 from NFPA themselves, but I'd like something better than that. I don't know if that's a valid credential for the industry professionals.
Well, if you're doing automatic doors, you don't have to be ADAM certified to inspect them. Nor do you have to have a credential after your name from DHI to inspect, swinging fire doors. It's not
correct.
It's not yet in the standard. And when you take that DHI class, which isn't cheap, I've been a DHI member for years. They're just going to be trotting out Chapter 6 or whatever it is. Don't quote me. I don't remember. I don't have to remember it. I just have to know where to find it, right? Whatever it is now. Is it 12 points, 13 points? That's all they're trotting out. It's nice to go through it with them because it's more than just here are the things you got to look at. It's the code behind it. And being a door guy, you'll understand terms like undercut and margin. Things of that nature. And
so that's probably a fairly easy class then, I would imagine, if you're really familiar with fire, with 80 and 101, all that stuff. Probably should be fairly.
Yeah, I mean, we're 5 generations of my family in this business, and I wouldn't say it was easy, but I would also say there was probably zero chance that I would not pass the class just because of my industry experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll look into that. I think DHI happens to be in Northern California next month,
everywhere.
So that's my shot.
Yeah. You mean like a semi-annual or something like that? Yeah.
Yeah, that way I don't have to go out to the East Coast for my class, because I've noticed they do a lot of classes, a lot of workshops back east, but over here, every once in a while LCN will be in San Jose or something, but it doesn't seem like they're here very often. So as a West Coast guy, I try to grab it up while I can.
Yeah, DHI is semi-regularly out in Scottsdale. The next one that's coming up, I think in May, is in Charlotte, Virginia. So yeah, back east. So yeah, it's nice to be able to take the class and have that in your back, that kind of credential in your back pocket. But unless you're doing door inspections, that class is, don't quote me, but a couple grand. It's not cheap because it's of like a 4 or a 5 day class or a 4.5 day class.
It's not too bad.
Well, no one's answering your phone. It could be stressful.
It's true.
Yeah. Anyway, my name is Richard. Let me know how it turns out.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.